This is basically just going to be a simple video of me going over my build that I have made in Questlog, and yes, for those of you who are immediately looking over here, that is 4,000 of each endurance and PvP across the board. However, I will go through exactly how this is functioning and the difference between these two builds in this video, so without any further ado, I guess let's get started. This was from me testing other builds a little bit ago. Alright, so the priority focus for Seekers, in my opinion, is to be as dense as humanly possible. So that way you can't be bursted down, because you only have your max HP to work with. So once this hits 0, you're dead, and if somebody breaks through your defenses and gets a crit heavy fireball off from like a snap dagger, you're sort of screwed. You could genuinely get one-tapped by that. So the purpose of this build is to never be able to instantly die to anything, and literally no matter what it is, and if you have at least one tank near you that's willing to pull full like 600, 700, 800 bonus damage scorpions off of you, there should be no reason you ever die unless like a tank just pulls you onto like say the arc boss and then you just die from like 15 Hellfire Rains hitting you at the same time, right? Like you're still killable, but you're it's going to be very hard to kill this. Now, you may notice there is two different two-piece side effects of Tier 2. We have a Tier 2 weapon and a Tier 2 belt. We have the reason being is because Eternal Warlord, the set effect from this gives 240 of each endurance to you, and then 120 of each to your teammates. And then Auric Vanguard gives you just more endurances for however much perception you have. So if we highlight our endurances over here outside PvP is still obnoxiously high, you'll see that the Vanguard leader set at the very bottom of the right side there is 225. That is from the Auric Vanguard. And the skilled veteran set you see there twice. That is the 120 for yourself and then the 120 aura for a total of 240. That means with this build, the Eternal Warlord set is giving more endurance than the Auric Vanguard. The reason that we don't have it more is because we just couldn't work more perception into the build without losing any of the other important stats. So first off, to make sure that we don't die is to make sure that the enemies don't hit us with their max damage, because this is a much bigger number to use with skills than this one. This video is updated for when the devs have added stat limits to like maximum evasion and everything like that. To clarify what those are, they're the stat limits after your stats cancel each other out. So say somebody's running around with 10,000 crit chance for some unknown reason, right? Because they're like, let's see how much crit chance we can get or whatever. The new limit basically makes that to a limit of 4,000 crit chance, I believe, and 3,000 endurance. So basically, if I have 3,300 endurance here, his crit chance goes down to 6,700. His crit chance would then be limited to 4,000. That is not limiting his initial crit chance to 4,000 before interacting with my endurances. That is after the endurances are calculated. So overcapping stats beyond the normal limits for that is still good if you're trying to kill tanks and healers. If you're trying to kill DPS, there is no reason to build more than 4,000 crit chance because it will not be taken into effect. And for the record, 4,000 crit chance will give you a 80% crit chance, and 3,000 endurance gives you a 75% chance to make them glancing hit. This is assuming you have 3,000 more endurance than their crit chance, which is pretty much never going to happen because anybody building damage gets like 1,000 crit chance for free, so, you know. Next up, if people have questions, leave your questions in the comments. I'll try and explain it better in a response if I can, but basically, a very simple way to do this is the standard equation for your crit chance is x being your critical chance divided by x plus 1,000. This gives you your diminishing returns, and we're going to say y is your actual crit percent. So x is what they put a limit on. X has a limit of 4,000. However, x isn't calculated until after my endurance lowers your crit chance. Is the most brain dead way I can think of wording that without trying to confuse you. Basically, the whole point of them doing that was to limit y, because people with like 6,000 evasion were getting close to like 85% evasion and such, or 85% chance to evade after people's hit chance were being calculated, which is why they've added this limit. Now the maximum chance to evade is like 75%, which means 1 in 4 attacks will hit you. This also means that no matter how much evasion you build for capping objectives in like battlegrounds or anything, you will still, like, you get stunned or hard collisioned by an ability like 1 in 4 times you will be hard CC'd. Alright, back to this. So, the first priority to staying alive is to make it so they don't max roll their damage. If they don't crit you, by the way, they also don't have any crit damage that gets calculated at all, which is really nice, which means you don't really need that much crit damage resistance if they can't crit you. The only people critting me with this build are people who have more endurance than my, or more crit than my endurance. So even if they had, say, 4,200 crit chance, they'd still only crit like 4 to 5% of the time. That's negligible. The other thing is max HP, so you don't get one-tapped instantly, but basically max HP is just a multiplier after all the other stats that mitigate the damage. Defenses are just standard defenses. There's nothing goofy going on here. Next up, you'll see my heavy attack evasion is also quite high. This is because enigmas. So this was just constant melee players and crit builds murdering me and just max rolling damage. This is so you don't max roll damage. When you min roll damage, then that's when you glancing hit, and then I have a very high chance of making you hit me for 0 damage if you min roll because of damage reduction and stuff. Heavy attack evasion is because of enigmas. This is solely because of orb void orb slam right here. Even if they glancing hit over half the hits, they'll still just one tap you because it hits you 40 times. That sucks. That really sucks. So if they can't heavy attack you and hit you for ×2, and they can't crit you, so they're going to be glancing hits, then when you mix that with damage reduction, which is at 192 with this build, you can basically just scoff at them and they just won't kill you. If you want to kill this, you'd have to either have 5,000 crit chance or like 2,800 heavy attack chance, give or take. You want at least 500 more heavy attack chance than my heavy attack evasion. Melee players will have a much easier time to kill me, but they don't have as much threatening burst as Orb does, or Staff. And then my skill damage resistance is at 909. So if you don't have absurd amounts of skill damage boost, either from buffs and just having a ton base, you're not going to get a boost here either. And I'll go through a solid math equation with examples in a moment with this. But we have some weaken resistance, but as you can see, I did not invest in this at all. Almost all of my resistances is coming strictly from my fortitude stat. Constitution points 355, Constitution bonus 100. So there's 455, 75 from the Greedseeker set, and then some from the Masteries and Artifacts. So very little of this is actually coming from stats. This has a tiny bit high because of the extinction proof thing here. This is being added to the new tier 4 dungeons that are getting added tomorrow. So this is no longer a Nebula boss only drop, so the average player will be able to get this now. Um, the only hard thing to get in this build, depending on how annoying it is to get the brooch, is this ring, but you just do your weekly battlegrounds, then you'll get this eventually for free. It takes like 5 weeks max if you just get, because you can get like what, 600 coins or PvP coins, and this is 3,000, so 6 times 5 is 30. So yeah, 5 weeks worth of battlegrounds if you only get PvP coins from battlegrounds for this. A nice little flex slot item until you get this is this ring. It basically has all the same stats except the attribute points change, so you won't be able to hit that 81 breakpoint of fortitude. But it basically gives you all the same stats. Next up, the earrings do give side damage reduction and side endurance, so you definitely don't want to hit this build on the side. The damage reduction gain from this alone would probably help you mitigate about 10 to 15% more damage, assuming you're glancing, hitting, and stuff. Alright, so now that we understand that the core bits of this build is quite literally just endurance, heavy attack evasion, skill damage resistance, max HP, defense, and then damage reduction. Okay. So these are all the core stats that actually make you take less damage. Basically, how it goes in order is I make it so you min roll your damage, so your skills are doing the lowest possible damage. Then I make it so you can't do ×2 damage. Then I make it so you do even less damage and your skill damage boost does not increase your damage. And then I make it so the defense lowers the damage further, and then after all that happens, then the damage reduction gets applied last. Now, the reason why the damage reduction is so important, especially from the earrings on the side, is quite simply because if we have a quick calculator here, say you hit me with 5,000 damage, right? Say you throw a fireball at me or whatever, right? Say we min roll it, so the fireball after min rolling from the endurance hits for 5,000, right? Because you don't crit. You're not going to heavy attack either. The skill damage resistance and defense is what would get applied next. So the defense, this amount of defense would lower the incoming damage by about 75%, give or take. So we would just multiply this by 0.25, and that's the new damage after just the defense. This is why some DPS builds will just build some defense and skill damage resistance and max HP and call it a done day, because this does make a noticeable chunk. Then we'll do the skill damage resistance. Most DPS have about 600 skill damage resistant or skill damage boost if they have a good build. So let's call it, say I have 300 left over, because like it or not, this artifact gives me 210 more skill damage resistance. So I'm sitting pretty at 1100 skill damage resistance. I think only Greatsword can get higher than that, and that's because of the stun ability they have that increases your skill damage boost by 150%, which over doubles it. You can reach, if you do a Greatsword staff build, you can easily reach 3,000 skill damage boost for a few seconds, which is disgusting to think about. Yes, besides the point. So we're going to say I have 300 or 400 more skill damage resistance than your skill damage boost. The skill damage resistance equation is the same as crit, so if I have 400 left, we're going to divide that by 1400. X divided by x plus 1,000 is 28.5. So we're going to inverse this. So the inverse of this is 7.15. So we're going to, right? So if we just plus 1, or no, we minus 1, Yeah, there we go. It's 0.714. Okay. So if we multiply this by 0.714, it's now 882, right? Because it only reduced it by 28.5%. So it's not that much, but you know, it's still a thing. So your fireball, so basically this would make it so your fireball is only going to hit me for roughly 900 damage. Now you would do the damage reduction, which just subtracts 192 from it, which is now down to 700. Now, this is for a much bigger hit, and this isn't even a shield block. If you shield block it, because you're holding an SNS, say this isn't a Seeker build, but an SNS build, then if you shield block, just reduce the damage by another 45% before you apply the damage reduction. So we would do 892.5, 92.5, and we would multiply this by 0.55. That, and then we would minus that by the 192. And as you can see, that is like a quarter of the damage almost, or a third, half. It's about half, little less than half the damage, which is noticeable. That's why shield is so annoying, and why it feels like tanks are unkillable, and why you can just equip a shield and then just W key with damage on a spear and be fine. Anyways, there's that. So basically, that's why this build is like this. But let's say you hit me with a less damaging skill than a fully charged up fireball, and you only hit me for, say, 2,000. We multiply that by 0.25 for the defense. We're down to 500. Now we multiply this by 0.2, no, by 0.71 for the skill damage resistance. We're down to 355, and then if we subtract that by 192, we're down to 163. This is why I said earlier that the damage reduction is extremely important. This is what actually keeps endurance players alive. Because after you mitigate everything by a percentage, it will never hit 0, no matter how many times you multiply it, because that's just how math works. However, the damage reduction, if we are using an SNS, our damage reduction would be well over 355, and that would make it hit us for 0. However, with our thing here, side damage reduction of 46, this would subtract this by 46 more. So if we do 117 divided by 163 minus 1. Basically, the earrings, the side damage reduction from the earrings gave us a 28% damage mitigation if you weren't using a super high damage skill like a charged up fireball against this. Anyways, that's how that's how this build mitigates damage as much as possible. The only crazy things about it is the sheer scaling of how high you'd have to get anything for this. I personally think all Seekers should build like this, because a dead healer doesn't heal, right? So like you could build 4-piece ethereal hero and then get instantly killed by people. And cool, you know, it's great that you were able to heal that DPS to full, 2 seconds faster, but if you're dead, your team is going to instantly die without you, basically. Assuming you only have one healer in the party, or if you're in a co-op dungeon or anything like that, right? But this is strictly for PvP. You shouldn't run this in PvE. For heaven's sake, like, please don't. Anything past 2,000 endurance in PvE is useless. I don't even think enemies can heavy attack you, so these are all wasted stats too. But, now, why am I using this belt? That's because it gives us heavy attack evasion. You can swap out this belt for this belt. This would obviously be a direct upgrade for many obvious reasons. This belt has like a 0.163 drop chance from nebula pouches. Otherwise, you have to get so this is extremely unrealistic for most players. If you have this belt, use it. If you don't, use the Cunning Ogre Girdle. Now, you can search for the Cunning Ogre Girdle, and you can use this one. The only difference is it gives you one more wisdom. So if you really cared about having one more wisdom stat point here, you could then lower it here, pump it into here, and the only difference is you have 5 more endurance and like 2 more magic defense, or 5. Yeah, so you have 5 of each endurance, 5 more magic defense, and 5 more of each resistance. If that is something you care to farm out, feel free, more power to you. However, if that's not something you care to farm out, then obviously just use normal Cunning Ogre Girdle. This drops from a 3-star dungeon, so it's really not that bad. Why I went for the breakpoints I did: Perception, because it gives us the 7.5 range, as well as the increased fortitude, or endurance from the perception. Why I went for 80 wisdom is because of bow mastery. This thing right here, it literally just gives us 10% CDR, which this build is severely lacking in because it's almost breaking 50%. That's why we really care about hitting that 80 wisdom breakpoint. Dexterity we don't care about at all. For those of you who don't know, healing skills, critical chance is x divided by x plus 3000. This means if you build 1000 crit chance, an attack skill will have a 50% chance to crit. A healing skill will have a 25% chance to crit. If you build the 3000 crit chance on a healer, your heals will only crit 50% of the time, whereas on a DPS, attack skills, they will crit 75% of the time. It is massive diminishing returns. It is not worth building tons and tons amount of crit chance on a Seeker or a healer in general, unless you're making a pure PvE build where you're doing crit chance and heavy attack chance and building it like a glass cannon, but you have a bunch of defense, skill damage resistance, and max HP, so you can instantly heal people to full in like nightmare raids. That is the only time you would ever need crit chance or heavy attack chance on a healer. Now, some heavy attack chance and crit chance feels great, especially on a healer like this. However, those are extremely unreliable on PvP healers because you have to allocate so many stats to your defenses that it's not reliable. And not reliable heals in PvP leads to a lot of just dead teammates, honestly speaking, from my personal experience. It's much better to just have consistent heals that you know what will do, so you can make more educated decisions on whatever happens. Next up, range. We do have a little bit of range in the build, partially because of this bow, partially because of the cloak, and then some mastery, and then perception. Because of this, we have 25 meters of range for the bow, and 26 meters of range for the wand. That is really, really good. That means you can heal your tanks without being in range of the enemy tank, so it's much harder to get plucked, and you can stay alive much easier. Because you're not having to put yourself in risky situations by getting closer and closer to the enemies, it means it's going to be even harder to kill you on top of all of these defenses. Attack speed is actually pretty high in this build, as you can see. There is options to make it higher. You can swap debuff duration for attack speed here. And this gives you even more. Now, why would you want attack speed on a healer? Obviously, it's so you can get your heals off faster. Nothing sucks more than trying to use Clay Salvation to quickly heal your party and getting stun locked out of it over and over and over and over and over again to the point where you literally can't use it. That has happened many times to me, which is why I'm very adamant about building at least some attack speed. Yes, we have no crit or heavy, obviously, here. We're just going for base healing stats. With this build, you can still quickly heal somebody for like 16,000 times 2, if you wanted to with a quick Clay Salvation or whatever. Or swift healing, my bad, but it's optional. It's not needed. We have no hit chance, as you can see. Ew, why do we have hit chance on the... that's base stat, never mind. Anyways, we have no hit chance on this because we're not hitting enemies. We're not. So we don't need to hit enemies. we're only hitting teammates, and teammates don't evade us, so there's no point in building hit chance on this build. Useless stat. If I could change the hit chance on this to literally anything else, I would. Next up, this is all just defenses. Yes, defense, damage reduction, no evasion for obvious reasons, blah, 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 blah. We don't have much crit damage resistance because we have so much endurance we don't care. And if somebody is building 5,000 crit on like a dagger longbow build, I'm sorry, building crit damage resistance isn't going to save us because they can reach 125% crit damage. Yes, they can do that. I can make a build going over a dagger longbow build with 125% crit damage if you guys would like. Next up, we already went over breakpoints. HP, yes, we did manage to reach 35,000 on this build. Why HP matters if everybody's hitting us for like hundreds of damage at most. Bonus damage Scorpion Freaks are scary. Yes, I call them freaks because if you're building 800 bonus damage on a Scorpion, the only people you're killing with that is healers, and screw you if you're building an entire build just to kill healers. Yes, bonus, so this game is based around rock, paper, scissors, right? You beat one, you tie with a second, and you lose to a third. If you min-max your builds properly, you can make it so you beat two, and there's nothing they can do to you, and then you lose so horribly and miserably to the third that even with help you might still instantly die. A dagger longbow building 125% crit damage and 5k crit chance can almost instantly kill this build because they'll crit us 50% of the time and all their crits will basically heavy attack. And there's just nothing you can do about that. And then bonus damage, because you can easily get 700 to 800 bonus damage on a Scorpion and then just instantly kill us because there's no defense against 800 true damage. Sure, we have 192 damage reduction, but that means they still hit us for 600 true damage every time without additional hits. But crossbow and dagger are multi-hit weapons, so all the multi-hit skills still hit us for that bonus bit. Health regen doesn't matter, we're a freaking healer. Max mana, we don't need much of. Yes, it's nice to have max mana because we get more healing from, this skill? More max mana you have, the more healing you get, but this is diminishing returns because we will always have this active and this active. Yes, this is a 75% healing buff. That's why we don't care about this as much. This is giving us a 30-something% buff. We're good with that. Mana regen is important, but not too important because we have 43 mana cost efficiency for like free. Literally just, you don't do anything, you just get it. With these two stats here, you literally have unlimited mana. The only time your mana will ever actually go down is if you're using every ability on cooldown for an extended period of time, and even then you might drop by like 10% every 3 minutes. This build is designed to constantly fight in the thickest of the thick of the fights in GVG content and not care. It's meant to not die and be useful the entire time it's alive. The only scary thing is if somebody mana burns you, and then you will die. The other thing is if a spear player uses Blood Leech Aura to constantly strip healer times off of you, you will also quickly die. We'll get to how to play style with this in a little bit. Skill damage boost, not effective. It also has the same diminishing returns of x divided by x plus 3000 versus the 1000, so this is not a 22%. Buff to the heal skills, this is a 288 divided by 3288. That is a not even 9% bonus to the heal skills. Sad. Cooldown speed, you can swap out debuff duration here for debuff duration, max HP, cooldown speed, or attack speed. This 33% is what our skills actually scale off of. So if we did this, it would go up to 38%. That is 5% CDR off your abilities. I'm sorry, would you like your abilities to be ready like, 0.6 seconds sooner or have 2,100 more max HP. One of those is clearly better than the other. I personally will be running for debuff duration. Healing, this isn't accurate because healing skills just don't get taken into effect, like the conditional passives. Specifically, the ones that are not being taken into effect is this one, and this one, and this one. Yes. Yes. Next up, healing received. Okay, healing received is extremely important because this stacks compounding. So basically, say you heal for 5,000, then the 5,000 gets scaled by, say, 200% healing after buffs. That 5,000 then goes to like 15,000. That 15,000 is then scaled off of this 10%, which is another 1,500. If you're a tank or a DPS that actually has like endurance or evasion, slap some healing received onto your build where you can, you will love it. It will make your healers building full defense instantly be able to heal you up to full most of the time. Just saying. Debuff duration is at 61.6%. This is because with the amount of defenses that we have, nothing is going to really instantly kill us. It's going to take a little bit to kill us, right? Even with the 125% crit damage build, you're still going to have to hit us with your full combo and probably then a few stray abilities to actually kill us if it's a 1v1. That means we can just start spamming every defense and heal ability on ourselves, and if you don't hit us with anti-heal, you're probably not going to be able to kill us very quickly. You're probably not going to be able to kill us in a 1v1. I think, honestly speaking, I think Scorpion's building bonus damage is the only class that can actually kill this build in a 1v1 without any help or outside interference, because you just need the continuous non-stop damage. Maybe if you had a janky spear build, like spear and dagger, super high crit damage with that might also be able to do it. But that's only because Spear's Blood Leech aura constantly just removes the heal over time from bow. Anyways, the debuff duration is very important for a few reasons. One, your stun combos from Greatsword won't last long enough for you to get your full combo off, and then we can just walk away and you don't get your full combo off, so we just don't care. The other reason is Curse Bombs. We don't have 40,000 plus HP. That means we can be one-tapped by a Curse Bomb. With this much debuff duration, you're not one-tapping us with a fully set up Curse Bomb build, no matter what you do. Skill healing over time is not reflective at all, because we get more from passive, specifically this one and this one, but these are like conditional. Continuous health recovery 36. 6 times 6 is another 36. Oh yeah, I should probably mention the 360 endurances you'll get from this, from just being in your squad, is not reflective in this number. Same thing with the side endurance here. We actually are sitting pretty at 4,500 of each endurance with this build. The other thing is with specializations here. With this thing, this is giving us another 150 on the side and back. That means we're now sitting pretty at about 4,650 to 4,700 of each endurance on the side. Yes, that is the max endurance, by the way, that we're able to reach on a Seeker without, like, completely crippling the build. Blah, 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 blah. Here we go, okay. Targeted skill healing over time is the same as healing received, but for heal over time on yourself. Amatoy healing, who cares? I don't even have Amatoy leafs on my character. Next up, resistances. These may look like a lot, but they're really not. You need 12. So for resistances, from my testing, the closest estimation I could get is x divided by x plus 250. The limit for resistance you can get is 1200. So if we have 1200 divided by 1450, because that's 1200 plus 250, is a 82.7%. Now, what does this mean? This means whatever skill you have, say we'll look at this for example, this skill has a 80% chance to bind the target for 4.2%. Okay. This means if we have 1200 more resistance to bind than you have bind chance, it would reduce that 80% by 82%, making it negative 2.7%, which means we are immune to your bind. This means any skill that gives you increased chance to proc the effects is extremely important. I can't even click on that, but this has ensnaring arrow hit chance. Right there on the skill has traits or whatever for, I'm pretty sure that increases the chance of it happening. I know Spear's leap ability that causes the AoE fear also has a chance to increase the fear chance by 15%, making it go from 80% to 95, making it so no matter how much fear resistance you build, you still have a chance to get hit by the fear. That is important to know and understand. We have weaken resistance just for lack of a better option for the rings, earring, and necklace, right? So we could change this weaken resistance to, say, petrification resistance, because Deluge no daggers, and Del is so annoying. They're so annoying. So yes. We could also do stun, but most people who do stun are with Greatsword, and they get stun chance for free. So we're probably not going to be building any meaningful amount of stun resistance. The other thing, sleep, we never get hit with. Just nobody uses sleep except for a few healers that slap it on to try and sleep tanks, but tanks can literally resist sleep like stupid easy, so it doesn't matter. Silence resistance is not bad. Silence resistance is a pretty good stat to have, but weaken resistance is generally speaking better, but anti-heal can't be resisted, I believe. At least when they did the anti-heal rework and stuff to buff it and nerf it and stuff, they made it so you can't resist it. It's not affected by weaken resistance. So why do we build weaken resistance still? That's almost entirely for thundercloud bombing from daggers. Each stack of thunderclouds reduces our endurance by 20, and it has a limit of 600 now. So we can lose 600 endurance just from weaken effects. However, if you're not going to do weaken, because it no longer affects anti-heal, and no matter how much weaken resistance you build, you're still going to have 3+ rows of different weakening effects, no matter how much weaken resistance you build, making it feel useless. I would recommend either silence or bind resistance. Collision resistance is pointless because tanks have 3000 collision chance. No matter how much resistance you build, you're not hitting 4200 collision resistance. As a seeker, you're just not. So don't even bother. They're gonna collision you. Bind, making it so you don't get rooted constantly. So for example, whenever a SNS player hits you with a chain pull, you're no longer rooted on the ground whenever you land. You can then just immediately start walking away. That's pretty good. So bind or silence resistance is what I would recommend if you're not doing weaken. Yes, this is max HP rune. We could make endurances higher, but it's just not cost efficient. Next up, skilled damage resistance. Like I said, we're sitting pretty at 909. If you equip this, it goes up to it goes up by another 414, which means we're at 1023 base. And then with artifact giving us another 210, we're up there. You know, that's 1200 skill damage resistance. You're basically going to always be resisting damage at that point. Also, to clarify here, for those of you who build 400 skill damage boost or something, or don't build skill damage boost runes on your weapons, say you get 80 here from your necklace for skill damage boost, 80 for both rings, and then 80 for your brooch. Because if you have a damage brooch, you can get skill damage boost right there instead of skill damage resistance. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 different sources of. So 4 times 80 is 320. If you don't have a cloak that gives you skill damage boost, if you don't use runes here, like say, red weapon runes do give skill damage boost, by the way, just saying. So if you don't build those and you only have 320, and I have 1200 skill damage resistance, if we have 1200 minus your 320, gives us 880 skill damage resistance left. If we divide that by 1880, we mitigate your damage by 46, almost 47%. That is shield block chance. So, yeah. With the skill damage resistance, our Seeker basically has shield block. That is why getting higher amounts of skill damage boost, no matter how much it is always extremely important on DPS. I have a DPS build for Greatsword Wand that has like almost... It hits like 2500 skill damage boost, basically. It's really disgusting. Greatsword is stupid. The highest possible skill damage boost build you can get, I believe, is Greatsword Staff, because of Staff Mastery giving you 225, Greatsword Passive giving you stupid amounts of skill damage boost, and then Greatsword Stun increasing your skill damage boost by 150%. You can then also get your skill damage boost buffed by a SNS and Wand. So if you have a SNS Wand player buffing your skill damage boost, you can actually break 3000 skill damage boost on a Greatsword Wand. That is a disgusting curse bomb that can easily break 50k, by the way. Moving on, chances, we don't need chance. We're not hitting enemy players with literally anything. We have weakened chance for lack of a better option, but it's whatever. Here we get into PvP stats. It's just endurance, damage or heavy attack evasion. Boss stats we don't have anything of. Side endurance, side critical hit, side damage reduction, front critical hit, because our earrings do give us side and front crit. This is just so we have a better chance to max roll our heals. The reason we do crit instead of heavy. Generally, if you add these together and then divide by 2, that's the average. So, 333 plus 711 is this, and then you divide by 2. That is the median number, or the middle number of these two. Basically, if you use this as an average to calculate your damage, it would be pretty accurate, assuming you don't have any crit chance. Basically, we could then take this and multiply by 2, and it's this, which is cool. You know, this is cool, but if you heavy attack when you're close to min rolling, it doesn't feel good. And like I said, I prefer consistency. So I'd much rather have my heals randomly use the 711 a bit more often than risking me doing an occasional heavy attack on a min roll. It's just more consistent early on when you have less stats to work with in the crit and heavy department. We do have some heavy attack still, just from strength bonuses, a random mastery, and then the wand here for heavy. I would actually prefer crit here. Okay, there. So yes, there. So we have crit next to no heavy, which is good. Even like this, because of our endurances, we're literally losing heavy attack chance, which is whatever, right? Alright, so that's basically all the stats explained for this build. Food, this gives, we don't care about the PvP hit chance, it just gives us CC resistances. This gives us endurance and skill damage resistance. This is an extremely expensive food. If you want to buy it, otherwise you're farming this yourself by fishing in a swamp. Your other two options is Fanleaf Squid for the skill damage resistance and damage reduction. This is what I would recommend if you're on a super evasion heavy server, aka West Coast servers in the United States or Europe. Evasion is super meta over there, which is great, but it also means there's less glass cannons with 5000 crit chance, so you won't have to build as much endurance. So it's better to just build damage reduction, skill damage resistance to make their glancing hits do even less damage to you. However, if you're on a East Coast server where there's stupid amounts of glass cannons everywhere, who rely on Oracle crutches, I would recommend the shrimp sandwich. It's much cheaper. You can get it from the cooking quests. The whatever missions that you can do to get the silver adventure coins, the adventure quests or whatever they are, you can do the same thing but for cooking. You still get the adventure coins, but you can actually do ones that give you crafted or shrimp sandwiches here. This gives you crit damage resistance and the endurance, so they won't crit you as much, but when they do, their crits won't do as much. Another decent option is where's it at? Here, fish pottage. Fish pottage gives endurance and heavy attack evasion. If you have the better belt that gives you the skill damage resistance, I would probably recommend fish pottage instead, because this will give you the more heavy attack evasion and endurance, giving you a little bit upper edge of the stats you would care about having. For now, I'm just going to leave it on this. Next up, vegetable stir fry. There isn't really a better food option. This gives us health regen Amatoy healing. We're a healer. We don't need to rely on health regen or Amatoys to heal. This gives more Amatoy healing, which you don't care about, and 2.5% healing received. That's not useful for ourselves, realistically speaking, because we're healing ourselves more with skill healing over time rather than burst heals. Very rarely will you ever need to burst heal yourself unless you're having to do a cleanse all combo, which we'll get to that in a bit. Move speed and attack speed for scorpion tail fritters, just so you can move around faster. Otherwise, this is max stamina, move speed, and attack speed, which this is great. This is better, but you're needing lava fish, and most people won't have that. Wild grape pie is not bad, but given that you just insta-drain your stamina all the way whenever you block in PvP, it's like meh. Last but not least, we have this one. This increases our healing and mana cost efficiency, so it just makes life a little bit easier. Otherwise, you could do max mana and mana regen. This is the cheaper one, but not as effective specifically for healers. Alright, ability combos. We'll get to masteries later. So basically there's two different main combos you'd use as a seeker to keep people alive. You will generally cleanse debuffs off of your teammate and then use swift healing on them. Because if you try and swift healing somebody with anti-heal, it's not going to do anything to them. Please remember that. Or you defense buff and then swift heal. This gives us healing received. I use this at single target. I don't use any expansion or anything, as you can see. So basically what this does is I will cleanse a teammate, apply Blessed Barrier on them, or I'll do Blessed Barrier first and then cleanse and then swift heal. And the swift heal will hit for 26k for one charge, which for most DPS will full heal them with one charge of swift healing. And then after they get hit by a little bit, you use the second charge of swift healing. The reason being is because I have 250% skill healing boost constantly at all times with this build because of the passives. This is only whenever we're hit with abilities, but since we're always getting hit by things, we will always have this active. This will have just 100% uptime, just flat out. This 100% uptime. This 100% uptime. This build's purpose is to constantly get damaged by things so we can always have uptime on our heals. Basically, the more we're getting hit, the more we're able to heal. And you'll constantly hit us for 0, so it doesn't matter. This is only in here because of mastery. If you don't have this mastery, do not use that passive, please. Basically it just makes it so Clay Salvation, Invincible Wall, and Fountain of Life are 15% better. How that 15% gets added in, I have no idea. So basically the shield does more, this does more, this does more. The AoE heals basically from Wand get affected by it. This gives us more skill healing over time and endurance. This gives us more skill healing over time and health regen. This is just an oh shit button basically, where if we're getting bursted down, this is going to give us a pretty fat grace room. So generally what I do when I play is I keep Healing Touch on myself at 3 stacks. Fountain of Life is reserved strictly for myself. 9 times out of 10, whenever you put Fountain of Life on a teammate, they will walk right out of it and then die. Don't use it on your teammates, use it on yourself. The benefit of us being on a super tanky build that's designed to constantly eat damage is you can literally have Healing Touch stacks on yourself. When you're really getting into that, or a spirit user comes by and uses Blood Leech to strip the healing over time off of you, you slap Fountain of Life at your feet, ignore your own health bar because you're not going to die, and then just keep healing your teammates even while you're getting smashed by multiple greatsword users and everything else. It doesn't matter. You literally just won't die. Yes, that's why Fountain of Life is for yourself. Then you can constantly use Nature's Blessing and Nature's or Healing Touch on your allies to keep them up. So if you use Nature's or Healing Touch and then Nature's Blessing because of the specialization here, this one, it adds an additional heal over time. This will very quickly heal up a teammate. And then the AoE shield, this really has next to no use with this build. It gives them like a 3,000 to 4,000 shield. It's really not gonna make that much of a difference. You do not want teammates building full glass with this build. You're not gonna be able to heal them or keep them alive. Just plain and simple. This is mostly just to make it so you give yourself additional bit of endurance for the sides, and just to have an AoE shield. Like, it does help. It's 3 to 4,000 more max HP. That could be like a 20% max HP buff for your DPS on your team or something. It is useful, but it's not super important. The only reason I actually have this in here is because I have the Cordy Wand. So, we have this in here because it's goofy, and you can abuse this to your heart's content, but I use giant Cordies, so we use this. But yes, this is a very good option. I'll explain that later. So yeah, so basically your oh shit combos to keep yourself alive is you Fountain of Life yourself, defense buff yourself, or really you want to defense buff first and then Fountain of Life. If you Fountain of Life first, it will take your current skill healing received and take it. So if you do this after you place this, you will not benefit. Whether you enter and exit it, doesn't matter. So defense buff first, then Fountain of Life, and then you use Limit Break, and then you use Purifying Touch. Because with Limit Break, with this specialization, with Purifying Touch will remove every single debuff on you. You will then use Swift Healing, and you hard reset 3+ rows of debuffs off of you, and you're back up to full HP. And Fountain of Life is still active on you. You'll then use Healing Touch and Nature's Blessing to hit yourself with fat heal over times, and then you'll use a Flash Wave. This will give you like 5 or 6 different heal over time numbers popping up above your head. You want to try and hit your teammates with Flash Wave here, by the way. Don't just panic flash it. And then you can go back to healing your teammates or running away to your team if you got plucked away or whatever else. Just practice it a bit, you'll see why. Now, I do prefer, a lot of people like this because you can get the stamina recovery back if you perfect block. If you're not perfect blocking, use the bow block, please. The reason being, if you're silenced, you can't block with wand block. You can block with this block if you're silenced. The other thing is if you do a directional perfect block, which is not that hard to do if you're getting into that, by the way, your next, the very bottom of the big paragraphs like up here, you'll see, additionally, the next skill attack that hits within 5 seconds lands as a critical hit. That is a guaranteed crit hit, which means you could Flash Wave, because this is a attack type skill, or no, this is a collision skill, I think. Or control skill, I should say. This counts as a control skill. But basically, you can use If this works with it, that's great. It means this is a guaranteed crit, which means the healer over time will always use your bow's max roll for it, which is nice. Otherwise, um, that doesn't matter as much, but it does give you, if you just stand still and block, it'll still give you defense, up to 500 if you read at the top there. Pause if you need to read that, but yes, so this gives 500 defense and you can block through being silenced. Otherwise, if you're managing to normally perfect block, use chaotic shield and perfect block those dagger silences and stuff to then instantly regen your stamina recovery and get an additional heal skill. So for now, I'll leave it there because this is like, if you have high skill, use this. If you have less skill, use this. If you directional dodge with this one, by the way, you can then gain a directional dash for additional movement. So if you're constantly getting plucked by greatsword players, you might want to use this one anyways. If you're using this block, I recommend building bind resistance instead of weaken resistance for the few runes from the accessories that we saw earlier. That's about all there is to it. These two are just flex. Literally, you can just remove these and do whatever you want with these. You could do bind, you could do sleep if you want to be a bit more annoying. Sleep if you want to try and stop people from capping or just be annoying by like sleeping the enemy healer type of thing. And then this is to just mostly hit scorpions with. You basically would want to use these if you're constantly getting gunned down by like a single scorpion, just hit him with the bind and then walk away. And then sleep him and walk away. And then just cycle these basically to keep him off of you until he like just screws off and leaves you alone. Otherwise, if you're in PvE, you want to use these two because you'll lower the boss's skill damage resistance, making your teammates do more damage, and then this gives your teammates CDR. I use this in GVG content, especially at Arc bosses and Dominion world bosses, because if your teammates are hitting the boss, you can get your healing skills active more, giving you more CDR. This is also why we don't care too much about having 50% CDR. You just T-target off people, and if you use it well, you can just reduce your cooldowns regardless. That's about all for the skills. I mean, there's plenty of guides online for Seeker skill rotations. It's really just keep healing touch on yourself at 3 stacks at all times, and then generally get the so you can get healing touch 100% uptime at 3 stacks on 2 people in a party with this build. Keep it on yourself and the tank. That way you can use all of your other abilities on the DPS in your party to help keep them alive, or yourself, or the other healer. The tank generally won't need more than just the healing touch on them because they have shield block chance and should hopefully have more defenses than their healer. Unless they're a super high collision chance, hit chance, collision resistance build, but you should only be collision resistance or collision chance in one build. You should not be trying to do both, otherwise you're going to be a little bit too squishy for a tank. Unless you're doing something very specific with a static, in my opinion. Yes, that is the skills explained. For mastery, pretty self-explanatory. Just take screenshots and copy if you want. For those of you who don't know, this buffs the damage over time and stuff. This buffs the healing, but they stack and remove each other's effects. So if you have both of these, they both get like a 43.2% buff to damage over time and skill healing. And you get like an additional 12 or 13% CDR for healing skills. And then this one also gives you another 14% CDR for healing skills. So our healing skills are actually sitting pretty at about 60 to 70% on this build, even though it says we only have 50. That's also why we don't care about CDR. We have this one selected because we don't want this, but we do want this. So this one gives us damage reduction and silence resistance, which is 2 S tier stats for us. And we want this healing buff for obvious reasons. But we do not want this. We don't care if we have this. We don't care if we have this. So we're going to get this for the cooldown speed. Select this one so then we can have this and not get this. If you have this on a healer, you are If you have this, you're throwing and killing your team. And then that is really all there is to explain for this. You don't want this. This ruin throws away all of your healing skills. And this one you also don't want because this decreases your healing. So we have this one for lack of a better option, because we want this for the skill damage resistance and we want this for the perception. So we're forcibly having it select this. This has no effect in PvP. I'm pretty sure it's blah blah blah. To a monster, yes, it says to a monster. So this is PvE only, no effect on PvP, but this can proc this ability. It will proc time for punishment on bosses, giving you that 220 skill damage resistance strip. This means if you wanted to, you could use a specialization for this, to then give a primary DPS, or if you notice one DPS is doing way more damage than the rest, throw this on them, type of thing, assuming they're not already giving it to themselves. The other thing is if you use this buff for time for punishment, you can make it with mastery give a shield as well. It is not a big shield. It is 400% of base damage. That is 400% of our wand. 4 times 3 is 12. It gives about 1200 to 2000 shield. That's not much, but a shield is still a shield. So if you have the specialization points, go for it. But I have my skill specialization points this way for a reason. You could get rid of this, but I can't recommend it because this drains 7. So you'd have to get rid of a 7 one. This is mandatory. You'd basically have to get rid of this and this to get this. If you find that worth it to you, great. However, with this on, you can have 100% uptime of Nature's Blessing. And this just gives you more endurances, so you just don't have to care. This only gives it to yourself. It says for the caster, not for your team, by the way. So yeah, if you care about getting the shield and skill damage boost on this, go for it. Otherwise, 100% uptime on Nature's Blessing to then spam Healing Touch single stacks on your party members to keep them topped up as much as possible is a valid strat. This just increases your healing further, but decreases curse damage over time, but we're not cursing people, so it doesn't matter. Next up for this stuff, we talked about this briefly. Skill cooldown speed increases by 10% if our wisdom is at 80, which it is. We do have 80 wisdom. Otherwise, it increases our healing. Now, this is outdated. This is still only healing, not skill healing over time. So if you're doing anything and you're using this and you don't have a wand or an orb to heal, you're not getting any use out of this. Please keep that in mind. Next up, we have this one. Keen Reflexes for more endurance. This is great if you want more melee endurance. We're using it to hit the 4K breakpoint here, so we have one more rune slot for another 720 HP, letting us hit the 35,000 mark. However, if you don't care about 720 HP, you should use Archer's Surge. This increases your min and max damage, because it's base damage, by 15, because it stacks 3 times. So basically you just have 3 stacks of Healing Touch on yourself at all times. You always have 15 min and max damage. That's not much, but it is noticeable in the long run for drawn out fights, especially when you're healing yourself. You'd be amazed by what it'll let you live through. You can also use this in tandem with the skill damage boost specialization of the book ability thing from Wand to really increase the damage of a key DPS. So for PvE, for example, you would definitely want to be using this over this. For bow, I don't think there's any other key things here. This is really good to have. I mean, health regen by 5k. Wand SNS is so goofy with this because you can use the SNS max HP ability that has a specialization that'll increase your health regen by 200%. So if this activates, then you increase your max HP with that. You can literally have over like 15,000 healing or health regen, which divide by 10 is 1,500 health a second that's not affected by anti-heal. So, that's a combo for all of you Warden players out there. This just gives us a small heal over time. So this is whenever we use a healing ability, it gives it to ourselves. So this generally heals me for about 272, if I recall correctly, with my build. So if you put Healing Touch on a teammate, this will give the 272 healing over time on yourself. This does not stack. It's just you use Healing Touch on other teammates, you get an additional heal over time on yourself. This is very similar to using the specialization for Swift Healing. Whenever you heal an ally, you also heal yourself. It's just for the heal over time stuff. This is not useful. We don't really use it. Yeah, we just don't use this. This is only effective when you're sitting in a whirlpool. So for those of you wondering, hey, why do you have anti-heal in the build? We don't. We only have anti-heal if we're in a whirlpool, but we're not in a whirlpool, so we don't care. Which whirlpool you can get from Nature's Blessing, but it's a specialization that we're not using. This we're not even using, so it doesn't matter. That we're using, yes. Yeah, there isn't really much else to talk about for this. This isn't bad. Like, this can be annoying, like, if you're getting into that by Ravengers, to clarify here, if you're a Seeker and you die to Ravengers, please build this build. Greatswords literally bounce off of you for like 1,000 damage. Like, their full combo won't even do a quarter of your health. Just use this build if you're worried about Ravengers. So this is like useless. Then every time, blah, blah, blah. This you can use to increase your your min and max damage more to indirectly buff your heals. But there's generally a lot going on, and you're constantly going to be getting attacked by like 4, 5, 16 players at a single time with this build. So not needing to try and balance this passive in the build is really, really nice. However, if you're somebody who really likes using this passive and you're like, yeah, that's perfectly fine for me to use, just rip off something. Like, just find something. Health regen, ranged hit chance, boom. Remove that, toss that on, boom, you're good. Great. Now this is like tweaking to hell. Okay. We're just gonna hit X. Not edit again. There we go. Alright, so there's that. Yeah, questlog bugged out since I've made this, so I don't know how you'd actually recreate this without just copying it, but yeah. There's the masteries explained. So yeah, do not get this. This is like the big no-no of the archery or the longbow stuff. This will lower your endurance by 360. That's bad. That's really bad. Next up, artifacts. So we are not using the 6-piece Creed Seeker, believe it or not. So if we talked about what we were doing earlier, if we used the full 6-piece Creed Seeker to get that 125 skill damage resistance, plus the belt giving us another 114, plus the passive giving us 210, we are pushing 1350 skill damage resistance now. So like, if you wanted more skill damage resistance, you can get it, but we're choosing to have more max HP here from the 2-piece set, 1500, setting us up nicely at 35k. And then if we activate this, because we're getting into that by something, and we just want extra grace and breathing room, we'll go up to 40,000. So if you see a really nasty curse bomb is incoming, just use this. The other thing about this that a lot of people may not know, this ignores anti-heal entirely. So this increases your max HP, and it increases your current health by 5,000. So if you're like at 1,000 health left, your oh shit passive procs, and you're hit with anti-heal, and this is down and you cannot cleanse yourself or anything, activate your artifact, and you'll immediately heal for 5,000 HP, and your max HP will go up. This is a really good oh shit emergency force heal that ignores all anti-heal in the game. I think that's perfectly fair considering weaken resistance doesn't affect anti-heal anymore. This is just skill damage resistance whenever you get hit by stuff. This will always be up 24/7 if you're just playing your roles, so it's fine. Yeah, that's about it for the build. Now, as you can see, I have two different builds here. This has more minimum damage and range. That is because of this. This gives strength and perception, which gives you min and max damage. And obviously it has range. This build, as you can see, this does not give strength or perception, gives dexterity and wisdom. So this has more CDR and skill healing boost. So this has, yes, it does have like a little bit more cooldown speed, whereas CDR, blah, there. Cooldown speed goes up to 62.7. That's a 38.5 compared to a 33.0. So that is a 5.5% more CDR with this build. And you have less range by a lot. So if we compare builds here, we click on this one and then we click on this one, this will only show the stats that are different. So this build with the Grand Elan's bow has less endurance because we have less perception and we're not getting as much endurance from the Auric Vanguard set. We have a little bit less attack speed. I'm not sure where that's coming from actually, hold on. Oh, because this bow has attack speed for a trait, that's where. We have way less range, 21.5% less range. Why? Because this bow gives us 14%, and the 50 perception breakpoint gives us 7.5. That evens out to 21.5. We also have 40 more crit chance for whatever reason. Right, because this, hold up, builder, this, no heavy, add crit. There, save, compare, there. Okay. This is still being inaccurate. That didn't save. My apologies. I will do this one more time. Refresh. Compare builds, dunk, dunk. There. Alright, this one actually has more crit chance now because the dexterity is higher. That's where that crit chance is coming from. The hit chance on this is higher because we have more perception. The protections, we have slightly more evasion from this for whatever reason, right? Because the perception from keen reflexes, I believe is what it is, 96 versus 120. Whereas this has more dexterity, so that's why that's like yes and no. But we don't care about that. This has more dexterity, this has more perception. More CDR, more skill healing over time by 16%. Again, this is not showing any of our passives. We have 36 plus 36%, so that's what, 72% skill healing over time from passives. So we're breaking 100 here, or almost breaking 100. We're at like 97% skill healing over time with this. Whereas this, we're at like, what is that, 72 plus 9 is 81%. Like it's literally just a 16% difference. It's not that much. The stun, your chances for status effects are higher because of your perception. That's what this is, but we're not hitting people with status effects, so this doesn't matter. Endurances on this build are slightly higher because of the perception scaling with Vanguard set. The blah blah blah. Yes, so this is what I was talking about earlier with the min and max damage. So as you can see, the wand barely changes at all. This build will consistently have the average heal amount will be slightly higher on this build than this build with wand skills. However, for bow, as you can see, that's a much bigger difference. For heal over time, specifically healing touch, it works the same as curses. It gets the median of the damage. So if I grab the calculator and we do 333 plus 711, that is the median, or nope, divide by 2. That is the median damage for this build. And then we would do 307 plus 748 equals that, divide by 2. There's the median damage of the other build. This build will have slightly higher skill healing over time for the bow's abilities, but it will have slightly less healing from the wand. This build will overall heal more. This build will overall tank more. It is negligible at best, though. Please keep that in mind. The biggest key difference is that this build has more range, this build has more healing. That is the only difference between these two builds. You can pick which bow you want. Now, you could say, well, this build has a lot of healing because of this ability. Well, guess what? This build has a lot more attack speed and range. This is literally utility. You are quickly casting your heals and you are healing people from a much further distance away. And this build is you're just burst healing people better or faster, and you are getting your healing abilities more often. But the diminishing returns are so high it's not going to be noticeable that much at all. So translation, if you don't have this bow, don't feel bad. This bow works perfectly fine. And most people will actually prefer this bow. I hope the new arc boss that comes with the new NYX map expansion is a support bow that gives us perception, strength, and fortitude, and healing buffs. Like, imagine how good that would be. Please, devs, give us that. There's actually a pretty good chance that happens, by the way, because Dayu's Noah bow is shield stripping, crowd control knockups. The Tevin bow is straight damage. They're probably not going to give us another damage bow, especially since we can just put Tev core into heroic bow. So there is that. Yeah, that is the only difference between these builds. If we wanted to, we could quickly look at this, the PvP heavy attack evasion. If you wanted to max that out, you would use Fish Pottage. You would equip the best in slot belt here, and then, okay, that is, oops, that's wrong build. There, okay, so we would equip this, and we're sitting pretty at 2177 heavy attack evasion. Now, we have, for the runes, double heavy attack evasion on both weapons. We have double heavy attack evasion on the bracelet, the earrings, and the belt. The only way to get more heavy attack evasion is if you use a different brooch, which would be this one. So with this build, we could reach 2,401 heavy attack evasion on the Seeker. And this is also while having 3,800 of this, but keep in mind, 360 endurances added to this, so we're still breaking 4K. If you're really scared of enigmas, and you have lucent to burn, or you just happen to have this belt, use this setup. For that heavy attack evasion, it will keep you alive a lot better. I'm not saving that, but yes. I will probably leave a link to this quest log in the description of the video for those who want it to clone it. In case those of you who don't know, if you clone this, you'll clone all of these. Just hit copy build. And that is about all I have to say with this setup. This is the most endurance, by the way, I've been able to find that I could get. If you wanted to use tier 3 gear, you would have to, and get slightly, if you wanted to get more heavy attack evasion and lose some endurance, you'd have to use, where's that? Umbral pants, which are like 20,000 lucent or whatever they are, because they only drop from Deluge Noah. They give endurance, but we care about the crit damage resistance and heavy attack damage resistance 2-piece set effect, because then we'll also use the Umbral gloves, which are really easy to get. These give range and heavy attack evasion. That range feels really good, especially if you're using this build. And it gives you that heavy attack evasion. You would then use 2-piece auric. So you'd use Umbral pants and gloves, and then you'd use Auric Vanguard helmet instead of Eternal Warlord's face guard. This gives you more fortitude, so then you can more easily hit the fortitude breakpoints. But that build is extremely expensive for minimum stat increases. Like I'm talking minimum, like less than 5% change in stat, like overall stats comparatively, and you're spending literally over 10,000 lucent. Cannot recommend. But yes, for those of you who wanted to see that build, I think I have one somewhere in here. Here, this is it. These armor pieces are what you'd want to wear if you were doing this, but with like this bow. So like if you're using this long bow, doink, doink with this stuff, this is what you'd probably want to use for these pieces. Don't look at the accessories. This is a work in progress build. Don't worry about this. But yeah, so these boots, these pants, these gloves, chest, face mask, cloak, and then these 2 weapons. If you're doing this Seeker build, those are the items I recommend if you don't care about how much lucent the build cost. Alright, well that is all I have to say for the build, so if you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comments section of this video, but I am looking, yeah, that's about it. If you want to see any other builds, please let me know. This is literally just a Templar. Yes, this Templar is these endurances. I do have a janky endurance stone cap build here. It's outdated. It needs updated, clearly. But mathematically, I should be able to reach 5,200 of each endurance with this build. And it still has heavy attack evasion and everything. So, yeah. Evasion is dead for throne capping. And I will say, my guild leader that uses a build similar to this for endurances and stuff, we have capped throne many times on East Coast glass cannon build servers, where people were running tons and tons of crit chance and everything, and we still capped throne because they just couldn't kill us. So that is a thing.